In the 26th year of the reign of King Qin, the world had just been unified, and the parallel world was compared to the sky, revealing the completely different lives of the two Fusu.Ying Zheng looked at the achievement on the sky, far surpassing himself, which was passed down through the ages and remembered by generations. He was praised as the Fusu of Emperor Taizong for eternity. Glancing at the young master Fusu who had died due to false edicts around him, he began to think about whether he could communicate with Tianmu to exchange a son for him. Li Si looked at the young master Fusu on the left side of the sky who had been killed by the future self-proclaimed decree, as well as the outcome of being beheaded and annihilating the three tribes. Looking again at the one on the right side of the sky who respectfully called himself Si Xiang. After his good end, he personally honored himself as the eternal one Xiang of Emperor Taizong Fusu. A thought also emerged in his heart, which was whether he could assist Qin II like Emperor Taizong Fusu. LVG, Han Xin, Peng Yue, and others watched as Emperor Taizong Fushu, who was renowned in history, demonstrated his strengths, started well and ended well. They also share the same idea in their hearts, and they also want to follow Emperor Taizong Fusu. Only Gongzi Fusu and Liu Bang doubted themselves and said, "Did I really do that poorly?" Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Comparing the Heavenly Curtain, Changgongzi Fusu and Qin. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the 26th year of the reign of King Qin, 221 BC, two sky curtains suddenly appeared above Tianmu. Above the left side of the sky curtain, there are 7 big characters displayed. De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu. Above the right side of the sky screen, there are 7 big characters displaying De Qin, Qin Taizong Fusu. These 14 characters are all different from the writing of the current Qin state and the writing of the former 6 states. But even for illiterate Qianshou, as long as they look up and see the text on the sky, they can naturally understand its meaning. Then, on the left side, the light curtain of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, began to light up and quickly circulated through one scene after another. Fusu, do you also agree with the Prime Minister's words of enfeoffment? Said the first Emperor, Ying Zheng, sitting upright on his head, with a calm tone that could not be heard of any ripples. The world has just been unified, and the hearts of the heads of the 6 states of Qian have not yet stabilized. I believe that by enfeoffment and control, the hearts of the heads of the 6 states of Qian can be stabilized in Qin, said Fusu, a young master dressed in a Confucian robe and with an elegant face. The angry first Emperor Ying Zheng stared at the young master Fusu below and said coldly, "Fusu, do you want to plead for them?" Gongzi Fusu, with a resolute appearance, admonished, "The world has initially been established and Qianshou has not yet gathered in the distance. All beings are reciting the teachings of Confucius. Today, the Supreme Court attaches great importance to the teachings of Confucius. I am afraid that the world will be unstable, so I will only observe them from above." Upon hearing these words, Emperor Ying Zheng could no longer bear the anger in his heart. He threw the memorial in his hand directly at Fusu and angrily said, "Get out of here and go to the county guard." An envoy arrived at Shangjuan and Emperor Yanshi executed Fusu and Meng Tian, ordering them to commit suicide immediately. After listening to the edict, Meng Tian realized that it was not right. He publicly questioned it and asked Fusu to return to the capital to defend himself. If it was really the order of the first emperor and there was no way to change it, it would not be too late to give up his life. However, Fusu wept and said, "Father bestowed death upon his son, yet I pray for peace." After that, everyone voluntarily sacrificed themselves and passed away. There were hundreds of ragged and emaciated Qianshou gathered together, with 2 people in the middle. One of them said, "Even if we die today, we will die. Even if we make big plans, we will die. Wait until we die, will we die?" Another person roared angrily, "Wang Ho Jiang Xiang, would rather have seed." Finally, the 2 leaders shouted at the same time, "Strike down the path of Wu Dao, punish the cruel Qin." Hundreds of Qianshou also shouted in unison, "Strike down the unruly and punish Qin." Wan, Ho, generals, and prime ministers, would rather have seeds. In the end, hundreds of Qianshou chopped down trees as soldiers and raised poles as flags. However, in just over 10 days, they even conquered several counties, owning 600 to 700 chariots, over 1,000 cavalry, and tens of thousands of infantry. For a moment, the world shook, and the nobles and people of the 6 states who had long complained about Qin responded to the uprising by killing local officials in the Great Qin Qi, Zhao, Yan, Wei, Chu, and others, who were originally destroyed by the Great Qin. All returned to power, and wars erupted throughout the world. The vast empire of the Great Qin was about to fall in just a few months. It's just one step away from the fall of Qin. Then, the light curtain on the left dimmed, and the light curtain on the right Ida Qin Taizong Fusu began to light up, quickly flowing through each scene. In the pavilion in the lake, Fusu, dressed in black brocade, sat opposite another young scholar. The other person looked at Fusu and spoke angrily. "The war sparked by the Qin dynasty has caused so many people's country and families to perish. Have you ever thought about it?" Upon hearing the other party's angry words, Fusu's mouth curved with a hint of sarcasm, and he turned to stand up and look at the fish swimming in the lake in front of him, saying, "Is the country destroyed or the family destroyed? Not bad, Qin fought this war. I fought for 10 years in the Great Qin dynasty, and countless soldiers of the Great Qin dynasty fought one after another, flowing blood like a river, in order to achieve the unification of the world. People all over the world only saw this war, and they only saw that the Great Qin was the winner of this war, and the first emperor was a tyrant who killed people like wildfire, right? But the unification war of Qin lasted only 10 years, while the war between the 7 countries lasted a full 500 years. Why didn't you mention the country's downfall over the past 500 years? Young literati are momentarily stuttering. Fusu slowly turned around and looked at him, saying coldly, "You said Qin destroyed Han, so you want to avenge Korea. Should the people of the former Qin and Zheng states overthrow South Korea and seek revenge for Qin and Zheng states, as Han divided Qin and destroyed Zheng? Or are you only allowed to seek revenge from your homeland that has been destroyed by Korea, and not from any other homeland that has been destroyed by Korea? If the people of the former Qin and Zheng states continue to seek revenge against Korea, will the people of the former Qin states, such as Hua, Wei, Gang, Yu, and Gua, who were destroyed by Qin continue to seek revenge against Qin? How can the world be peaceful with such reciprocating movements?" The young literati, who had always been able to speak eloquently, now seems to have run out of words and find it difficult to articulate. Fusu turns around again, looks at the lake, and calmly says, "For 500 years, the world has been divided, and the forces of different countries are divided. Everyone has different characters, languages, lifestyles, and traditional beliefs. That's why we fight at any moment, and once we do, we haven't stopped for a whole 500 years. Qin conquered the 6 states in order to eliminate these barriers. Only with no borders or language misunderstandings can people live together harmoniously. Only in such a country can it truly be called a paradise, and the people can live and work in peace and contentment." Upon hearing this, the young scholar, who had been speechless for a long time, finally squeezed out a sentence. "This world is only your Great Qin's world, without the 6 kingdoms, nor our home." Fusu smiled contemptuously and said, "Country. How can a country be ruled by feudal lords? Home. 100 years of war, why make a home? It's Qin who commands all sides to submit, and the world is open. It's Qin, let the people have food in the morning and at night. It was Qin who created the true country and family." At the end of the sentence, the sound was like thunder, earth and sky shaking. Wearing an imperial crown and with eyes as deep as the sea, Fusu sat on the throne, looking down at the young general kneeling on one knee and full of energy, and smiled, "Do you really have no limit to commanding troops?" The young general looked up proudly and said, "I will lead the army. More is better." "Okay, since that's the case, I'll give you 1,000,000 soldiers and horses, said Fusu with a restrained smile and a majestic tone. I want to see if the 300,000 string control soldiers of the Xiongnu can really withstand my 1,000,000-strong army. In this battle, either I will see the Xiongnu dance to the nobles at the celebration banquet. Either you see the Xiongnu lying in the imperial temple and being captured by me. The young general arched his hand and responded loudly, I will not disappoint your majesty's request. Afterwards, various fragmented scenes flashed through, with Qianshou and his family sitting together, eating hot white rice, and even having a few types of meat and vegetables on the table. Qianshou walked in the winter snow wearing clothes of unknown materials, fearless of the cold. A child from Qianshou is reciting books that are as light and thin as cicada wings, as if they are silk but not silk. In unison, various scenes interweave, ultimately merging into a prosperous scene of the people of the great Qin dynasty eating, wearing warm clothes, and living and working in peace and contentment. After briefly flashing through a few scenes, the light curtain on the right side of the Qin Taizong Fusu also dimmed. At this moment, all parts of the world are silent. So those who look up and gaze at the sky naturally know from the darkness that these two sky curtains showcase our own world, as well as another parallel world that has one Su's past, present, and future lives. The displayed content is just too shocking and terrifying. One is the death of Fusu, with rebel forces from all over the world rising one after another, and the precarious future of Daqin. And the other is to support the revival of the Soviet Union, with 1,000,000 strong soldiers of the Great Qin driving away the Xiongnu, and to govern the future where everyone had enough to eat, wear warm clothes, and live and work in peace and contentment. Among them, the fate of the past, present, and future related to the tens of millions of nobles and nobles under the rule of the Great Qin, as well as the Qianshou, is reflected. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 2. Under the heavenly curtain, all sentient beings in various states seek freshness. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. On the railing steps outside the Qilin Palace in Xianyang Palace, standing with a sword and gazing at the sky, the first Emperor Ying suddenly said without looking back. Fusu, are you Changgongzi Fusu or Qin Taizong Fusu? As the protagonist of the heavenly curtain, Fushu heard his father's question and wanted to say that he was Emperor Taizong Fushu of Qin. But at the recent debate on enfeoffment system and county system, he said the same words as the eldest son Fusu. Changgongzi Fusu may be his true future. Thinking of the scene of Changgongzi Fusu dying under orders, Fusu's face turned pale. He couldn't imagine what he had done in the future, to the extent that his father was so disgusted with him. Not only would he be sent to the county guard, but he would also be ordered to be executed. Fusu opened her mouth and wanted to say something. But he found that his throat seemed to be choked by an unknown hand, unable to utter even a syllable, unable to speak for a long time. Emperor Ying Zheng, who had not heard an answer, did not reprimand anything because he had already known the answer when he asked. So the first Emperor Ying Zheng only said one thing. You'd better be Emperor Taizong of Qin, Fusu. At this moment, whether Fusu was Emperor Taizong of Qin is no longer important to him. More importantly, he now urgently wants to use the heavenly curtain to know why the future of the great Qin dynasty will lead to the situation where the whole world is rebellious. And how did the great Qin of another world achieve the goal of bringing the people back to their hearts, ensuring that they had enough to eat, wear warm clothes, and live and work in peace and contentment? As long as he knows about the future, he will inevitably learn from its experiences and lessons, in order to avoid the collapse of the great Qin again, and let their world's great Qin and another world's great Qin prosper like a country. The Qin is in his hands and will never be allowed to lead to the end of collapse. The hard work of the ancestors of Qin throughout history is absolutely not allowed to be destroyed by anyone's hands. All officials, prepare to keep records. At the same time, after the heavenly curtain, it was ordered that county governors and officials from all over the world come forward to pacify the Qianshou and stabilize the people's hearts, in order to prevent the remaining traitors from the six kingdoms from using the words of the heavenly curtain to coerce innocent Qianshou into rebellion and cause trouble. Besides, after the sky falls, Meng Tian personally leads his troops to patrol the four directions of the Qin to prevent illegal activities. If there is a rebellion by rebels, they should be immediately suppressed. Further decree all young masters and princesses to come here. Zheng did not immerse himself in the shock and sadness of the possible collapse of the great Qin dynasty, as revealed by the sky curtain. Instead, he immediately calmed down and made various arrangements in an orderly manner. After Emperor Zheng spoke up, a group of civil and military officials who had been shocked by the two completely different futures of the great Qin revealed by the heavenly curtain immediately came to their senses and responded in unison. Yes, Your Majesty. Watching the towering and unshakable figure of His Majesty the First Emperor. Standing behind Emperor Zheng, a group of civil and military officials including Marquis Wu Cheng Wang Jian, Marquis Tong Wu Wang Ben, Left Prime Minister Wei Zhuang, Right Prime Minister Wang Wan, Ting Wei Li Si, Shangqing Meng Yi, and Neishi Meng Tian felt at ease. For the courtiers of the great Qin dynasty, and even countless old Qin people, the first emperor was their faith and the divine needle of the great Qin sea. As long as Emperor Shi is present, no matter what they face, everyone in the great Qin is fearless. Even if fate indicates that the future of the great Qin will collapse, they will never believe or accept fate. In the old Korean homeland, Zhang Liang's face turned green and white. Others couldn't recognize the young scholar sitting and arguing with Emperor Taizong of Qin, Fusu, on the sky, but he recognized it at a glance. Because of that person, he can't be more familiar with it. The young scholar who was arguing with Emperor Taizong of Qin Fusu was himself, or rather an even older version of himself in the future. Of course, to be more precise, it could be a slightly older version of oneself in another world. But although the world is different, the content of the debate is interconnected. Since the destruction of Korea by the state of Qin, he has been painstakingly plotting against Qin. After all, the tyranny of Qin caused the downfall of other countries, and it was only natural for him to oppose Qin and seek revenge. But in the heavenly curtain, Emperor Taizong of Qin, Fusu, is questioning and refuting the legitimacy of his anti-Qin stance. Do you want to say that the great Qin launched wars recklessly for his own selfish interests? But in the past spring and autumn period, which feudal state did not provoke a war? Including his homeland South Korea, it was also established on the basis of dividing the state of Jin and also destroyed the state of Zheng. If we want to say that the great Qin caused the downfall of the country of South Korea, then did South Korea not let Jin and Zheng go bankrupt in the past? If the great Qin was a violent Qin, wouldn't South Korea be considered a violent Han compared to the Jin and Zheng states in the past? What is the essential difference between the former South Korea and the current Qin state, after wandering around? It was just that South Korea was once strong, Jin and Zheng were weak, and then Jin and Zheng were destroyed. Today, Qin is strong, South Korea is weak, and then South Korea is destroyed. The reason why he rebelled against Qin was because in his view, the former country of Korea was the victim, while Qin was the perpetrator, so it was only natural for him to rebel against Qin. In another sense, his anti-Qin sentiment was in line with the etiquette and loyalty that the nobility of this era admired and recognized. Or rather, it is precisely for the sake of preserving the loyalty and integrity of the Zhang family's generations of Korean ministers that he is so steadfast in his anti-Qin stance. But if South Korea is also another perpetrator, then his anti-Qin stance would be a bit untenable. At least in the past, he used to say that reasons such as violence against Qin is immoral would not work. Because South Korea used to be just as unjust. So if he wants to continue fighting against Qin with the slogan of violence against Qin without justice, like before, he must find out the righteous aspects of his homeland Korea to demonstrate the differences between Korea and Qin. Otherwise, he not only cannot persuade others, but also cannot convince himself. Of course, this is mainly because Zhang Liang is a wise person, and the most obvious characteristic of a wise person is that he is prone to overthinking. If Zhang Liang is just a reckless man, then what Emperor Taizong of Qin said to Fusu is none of his business. Whether to rebel against Qin or continue to rebel against Qin will still be his concern. So Zhang Liang fell into the trap of listing the immoral practices of the Qin state, and then compared it with his homeland South Korea. He then discovered that his homeland South Korea had also done these immoral practices, and his argument failed. Then it was re-listed, compared again, and finally it was the tip of the bull's horn where the argument failed. In Wu County, Kuaiji County, Xiang Liang laughed heartily as he saw the sky curtain of Changgongzi Fusu depicting the downfall of the great Qin dynasty. Ha ha ha, the violence against Qin cannot last long. Anti-Qin and restoration of Chu is just around the corner. As for the scene of the prosperous era of the great Qin dynasty displayed in the sky curtain of Emperor Taizong's support for the Soviet Union, it was ignored by him. How could the great Qin in this world possibly be the one where Emperor Taizong of Qin supported Su? Even if it really is, he won't admit it. Immediately, Xiang Liang lowered his head and looked at the young man Xiangyu, who was about 11 years old, beside him, reminding him. You must study hard and wait for the opportunity to regain Chu in the future. We can no longer give up like we did in the past when we studied and learned swordsmanship. Young Xiangyu raised his head and said defiantly. Reading and literacy can only remember a person's name, and learning swordsmanship can only compete with one person. If I want to learn, I need to learn the method of 10,000 enemies. As soon as these words were spoken, Xiang Liang's face became even more cheerful. He patted the shoulder of the young Xiangyu and said happily. Okay, from today on, my uncle will teach you the art of war for our Xiang family, and make you the enemy of 10,000 people on the battlefield. When the heavenly curtain appeared in Peixian, Lu Ji was feasting on dog meat with Fan Kuai. Listening to the 8 big characters, Wang Ho Jiang Xiang, Ning Yu Zhong who spread from the heavenly curtain, there was an inexplicable touch in his heart. Are those who are called princes or worshippers of generals born with good fortune and noble offspring? Can't Lu Ji be called a marquis or minister of worship? This thought, together with the originally calm heart, stirred up waves. Xiao He, who served as the chief official of Peixian County, and Chao Can, who served as the prison official of Peixian County, both walked out of the county office and looked up at the sky, either with furrowed brows or a thoughtful expression. Han Xian, a young man from Huayin County, dropped the branch in his hand and stared at the skylight in astonishment. He inexplicably felt that the young general in the Qin Taizong Fusu light curtain, who spoke freely and commanded more troops, was very similar to himself. It's not that he looks alike, but he feels like he can also command many people. However, he had never had the opportunity to try it before. Millions of people, I really want to know what it feels like to be in command. Young Han Xian looked at the sky curtain, with a hint of envy in his eyes. Under the sky, the nobles of the 6 states and the heads of Guizhou in various parts of the great Qin dynasty had their own reactions, whether they were happy, surprised, or afraid, which can be said to be diverse sentient beings. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 3. Ying Zheng. Instead of relying on reliable children and grandchildren. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Above the sky, the light curtain on the left side of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, once again lit up. There is Fusu in the mountains, and Hehua in the Shi. His name is Fusu. Accompanied by a calm voice that could not conceal the joy, a loud baby cry sounded, and the first legitimate eldest son of Qin King Ying Zheng descended into the world, and Fusu also grew up healthy and lively under the careful care of the queen and a group of palace maids. At the age of 6, He was enlightened and also studied court etiquette at the age of 9. The elementary education was over, and Zheng specially arranged a group of knowledgeable and talented scholars to teach and support Su. Among them, there are Dr. Qin Yu who teaches the Confucian etiquette of Fusu, Ting Wei Si who teaches the legalism of Fusu, Marquis Wu Chengwang Jian who teaches the military strategists of Fusu on the battlefield, and Prime Ministers Wei Zhua and Wang Wan who teach the virtues of the ruler of Fusu and the governance of the country. It can be said that King Qin Zheng of Qin put a lot of effort into studying for his son Fusu. Watching the content played from the sky curtain of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, a hint of impatience flashed in the eyes of Emperor Zheng. Because for him, the content being played in the sky at this moment is all that has happened in the past, and it is all things he already knows. The only function is to make him more certain that the Daqin Changgongzi Fusu, on the sky curtain is really the current Gongzi Fusu. Just as Zheng was feeling impatient, the hurried young master Jiang Lu, young master Gao, young master Hu-Hai, and others carefully paid their respects to their father's king and said, "Farewell to father." On their way here, they also saw the sky curtain and naturally knew about the future of their elder brother's death by decree. In addition to being frightened in my heart, a glimmer of luxury also arose. After all, if their elder brother dies by decree, does it not mean that they have the opportunity to replace their elder brother and become the new Qin II? No prince of the great Qin can be indifferent to the throne of Qin II, it's just that their father has never given them a chance in the past. But now, maybe their opportunity will come. Upon hearing this, Emperor Zheng also turned his head and looked at the young masters Jiang Lu, Gao, Hu-Hai, and even Princess Yin Man and Princess Liang in front of him. Because according to the heavenly curtain of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, in the future, Fusu should have done something and was extremely despised by him, even issuing an edict to kill him. Although he didn't know what Fushu had done in the future now, he was so disgusted by him. But if Fusu dies, he will definitely choose a new young master as the future heir of the great Qin. And after Fusu, who will he choose as the new heir of Daqin in the future? And does the other party really have the ability to take over the position of Fusu and lead the great Qin for generations to come? Just thinking about the ending of the downfall of the great Qin, as indicated by the sky curtain of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, Zheng immediately felt that no son could be trusted. It's better to expect his longevity than to expect his descendants. As long as he can live forever, there is no need to worry about the downfall of the great Qin dynasty. He will live forever, and the great Qin will also be with him for generations to come. Thinking of this, Zheng's heart immediately rose with the desire to seek immortality and longevity. After all, even miracles like the heavenly curtain that can showcase the future, and even the future of other worlds, so the past immortals and immortals should not be illusory. How can we find immortals and achieve immortality? Offering sacrifices to the heavenly curtain, I wonder if it's possible to exchange it for immortality. While pondering, Zheng caught a glimpse of his group of children who were still eagerly looking at him. He directly arranged. Take pen and ink, and record the words of the heavenly curtain with the ministers. Gongzi Jianglu, Gongzi Gao, Princess Yin Man and others all nodded in response. Yes, father. Then the young masters and princesses took a piece of ink from the attendants beside them, each looking for a place to sit down, while listening to the words of the sky curtain and taking notes with their pens. Among the teachers, Marquis Wu Chengwang Jian, Prime Minister Wei Zhuang, Wang Wan, and Ting Wei Si were all important officials of the court, with heavy daily affairs and less time to teach the young master Fusu. Relatively speaking, the more Dr. Qianshou was able to teach Gongzi Fusu, the more time he spent. In the process of teaching Gongzi Fusu, Qianshou also praised their Confucianism and belittled other theories. As a result, Gongzi Fusu was increasingly influenced by the teachings of Qianshou, and at the same time, he increasingly admired Confucianism, which led to a hidden resistance and estrangement from legalism and other theories. Ting Wei Li couldn't help but glare at the nearby Dr. Qianshou and sneer. Originally, a Confucian scholar was just a petty person who secretly chewed his tongue behind his back. He talked about how Changgongzi Fushu became increasingly distant from him and often admonished him for being too strict in law enforcement. It turns out that Qianshou is stirring up trouble behind his back. But it's also because he doesn't attach enough importance to the eldest son, Fusu. Although Emperor Shi ordered him to teach the eldest son Fusu, he did indeed do his best to teach. But that's all there was to it. After teaching, he didn't put more effort and energy into his eldest son Fusu. After all, he was one of the 9 ministers of the great Qin, and as a court captain, he still had many things to do. And if he also wants to become the prime minister of the great Qin, it is necessary to spend more time and energy on national affairs. Otherwise, how could he prove his abilities to the first emperor, and how could the first emperor promote himself to the position of prime minister? Furthermore, to put it bluntly, Fusu is only a young master now, not even a crown prince. Changgongzi Fusu wants to become the new ruler of the great Qin, but he doesn't know when he will wait. It's possible that when the eldest young master Fusu becomes the new ruler of the great Qin, he will either die of old age or retire and be raised with honor. At that time, even if Fusu, who had become the new ruler of the great Qin, was close to him, how much benefit would it bring to him? So instead of spending time and energy trying to please Prince Fusu, it's better to spend more time and energy trying to please Emperor Shi, so that he can become the prime minister of the great Qin earlier. But Qianshou is different, he is just a doctor. Doctor was a new official position established by the first emperor in addition to the system of 3 officials and 9 ministers. The rank ratio is not high, and all officials respectfully refer to them as gentlemen and enjoy special treatment. They have the right to discuss and advise on policies related to the construction of the Qin state system and the formulation of national development. To put it bluntly, Qianshou is just one of the members of the great Qin national think tank. In addition, the state of Qin was not a strong country using Confucian methods, and Qianshou was not a trusted minister of the first emperor. The first emperor also valued legalism more than Confucianism. So it is somewhat unlikely that Confucian scholars such as Qianshou would want Confucianism to flourish under the rule of Emperor Shi. So Qianshou and a group of Confucian scholars placed their wealth on the eldest son Fusu, hoping to influence the later great Qin by influencing him, and then let Confucianism replace the legalism of the great Qin in the future. And all of this went smoothly. Under the influence of his teachings over the years, Changgongzi Fusu was indeed the closest to their Confucianism. Unexpectedly, the heavenly curtain also revealed the derogatory remarks they made about other theories when teaching the eldest son, Fusu, in the past. And he was also caught by the bitter master on the spot, which is a bit awkward. But soon Qianshou became more confident and instead said, "Is there anything wrong with what I said about the legalist school's strict punishment, crude and barbaric behavior, and the act of executing without teaching?" Li Sidong even raised his eyebrows, preparing to engage in a growing debate with Qianshou over the teachings of Confucianism. Just as I was about to argue, the light curtain of De Qin, Changgongzi Fusu, on the sky gradually dimmed, while on the right side, De Qin, Qin Taizong Fusu, gradually began to appear on the screen. At the same time, the first emperor standing in front turned around and glanced lightly at the two of them, and the silent imperial power immediately calmed them down. The rulers and ministers of the great Qin quietly watched another life story of Emperor Taizong's support for the Soviet Union once again. There is Fusu in the mountains, and Hehua in the Shi. His name is Fusu. The same name, but since birth, this young master Fusu has been somewhat different. Quiet, this young master Fusu seems to have a quiet nature and rarely cries. Usually, only when hungry or in need of convenience, will you cry and make a sound, as if reminding others in this way Qinming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 4. Ying Zheng's revealed Black History, Seeking Fresh. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the young master Fusu was 1 year old and could speak and walk, there would be no more crying and fussing like children at the age of 3. One day when King Ying Zheng of Qin came to the harem to visit Fusu's mother and son, Fusu reached out and gently tugged at his father's sleeve, speaking crisply, "Father, I want to read." If you can read at the age of 3, this age group is a bit early. Children at this age are generally still in a stage of ignorance, playfulness, and play at this age group, not to mention whether one can read or not. Even 3 meals may not be safe to eat, so even children of nobles and nobles usually wait until they are 5 or 6 years old before starting literacy education. However, this is an ordinary child, and for his first child, King Qin Zheng is still quite familiar with it. Quiet, intelligent, and worry-free, almost everything can be understood and remembered at a glance. From childhood to adulthood, I have never let anyone worry about it. After considering for a moment, Prince Ying Zheng of Qin agreed, "Okay, in a few days, I will arrange for my master to teach you how to read." "I want my father to teach me how to read." Fusu looked up at his tall father. King Ying Zheng was stunned and instinctively wanted to refuse. After all, as the ruler of the state of Qin, he had many affairs in his daily life. Not to mention taking the time to teach a child how to read. Even visiting Fusu took him 3 to 5 days to come, and there is also an unspoken reason, which is that he doesn't know how to get along with his own children. I haven't really experienced the parental affection of ordinary families here with King Ying Zheng of Qin. After all, his father abandoned his wife and children when he was 2 years old. His mother recently chose to have a lover instead of him. It can be said that his parents brought him almost all bad memories, so in this situation, King Ying Zheng of Qin couldn't find a suitable and normal reference template for interacting with his children. Therefore, when his children wanted to get closer to him, the first reaction of King Qin Zheng was a bit bewildered. So King Ying Zheng of Qin chose what he was most familiar with, treating his courtiers with a stern face and dealing seriously with his children. Under the sky, a group of civil and military officials all bowed their heads and remained silent like cicadas. After all, whether it was the abandonment of the wife and children by the late king, or the rebellion of the male favorite of the late Queen Dowager, it is an unforgettable black history for His Majesty. And now the heavenly curtain can be said to have publicly disclosed the dark history of His Majesty's past, even to the extent that it is truly known throughout the world. Perhaps the people of the world are mocking their Majesty at this moment, and one can imagine how angry their Majesty will be. In Wu County, Kuaiji County, Xiang laughed heartily at the scene of King Ying Zheng being abandoned in the state of Zhao when he was young, as shown in the sky curtain. Later, he angrily said, "Pooh, it's all because of Zhao Guo's bunch of useless people. If they had killed the tyrant while he was still a proton, how could they have caused the downfall of the 6 kingdoms today? I deserve the downfall of Zhao." Although all 6 countries were destroyed, it does not mean that there is a common enemy among them. At least as a valuable legacy of the Chu state, Xiang looked down upon the other 5 states and believed that they were dragging down the Chu state, otherwise the Chu state would not have perished. In the old Korean homeland, Zhang Liang also temporarily walked out of the ox horn tip and couldn't help but sneer at the scene on the sky showing Zhao Ji supporting the rebellion of Yai. Father doesn't kiss, mother doesn't love. The tyrant is indeed born unknown. At the same time, Zhang Liang began to think about how to use this to discredit the reputation of Qin Emperor Ying Zheng and stir up more resentment among the people of Guizhou. Pei Lu Ji listened to the words of the sky curtain and put down the dog meat in his hand, smacking his tongue and saying, "The emperor was not born rich and prosperous, and everything went smoothly. He always thought that people like the first emperor, who were luxurious, were born with everything going well and happiness and contentment. From what I hear now, it's hard to say in other aspects. Perhaps in terms of parents, Emperor Shi's parents are not as good as his parents. Although his parents don't look up to him very much, and even scold him from time to time, saying that he is not as good at managing as his second brother. But at least his father couldn't do such a thing of abandoning his wife and children, and his mother wouldn't want any lover to leave him. In Xianyang Palace, a group of great Qin princes and princesses lowered their heads and occasionally secretly glanced at their father king. They are still the first to know specifically about their eldest father and mother. However, this is also normal. In the past, the act of the former king abandoning his wife and children, and the former queen supporting the rebellion of male pets, under the Qin emperor's winning politics, can be said to be a silent taboo in the past. Naturally, no one will get tired of living and tell the young masters and princesses these messy things. What surprised the young masters and princesses even more was that their father, the king, didn't know how to get along with their children, so he kept a serious face when facing them. This strange contrast immediately made the young masters and princesses feel the majestic and solemn image of their father in their hearts, quietly undergoing a slight change. Even some young masters and princesses are thinking that in the future, they should be bold and reckless in front of their father. However, just as such thoughts arose, I saw my father standing in front calmly turning his head and giving them a glance. Suddenly, all the young masters and princesses were so scared that they buried their heads. Be reckless. I can never be reckless in front of my father in this lifetime. After looking back, Emperor Fusu.Ying Zheng continued to look up at the sky. As for what the courtiers guessed in their hearts, he was angry because the events of the former king and the former queen were exposed to the world. He is naturally angry. However, for him, no matter how angry he may be, the matter of the former king and the former queen is already a thing of the past. If the downfall of the state of Qin had not been weighing on his mind, he would surely be greatly angered now, and even ordering that no one in the world talk about this matter would have been excessive. But now, he only wants to know why the state of Qin was destroyed and how to change the future of Qin's downfall. For this reason, he can put aside everything else and endure it for a while. Looking at the father who wanted to refuse, Fushu spoke again and said, "Half an hour, my father can teach me for half an hour every day." King Zheng lowered his head and stared at Fushu, who also looked at him without fear. After a while, King Zheng of Qin finally spoke up and said, "Take some ink and silk. Today, I will teach you how to give it a try." King Zheng had never taught children before, let alone whether he could teach them well, but as his first eldest son's request, if it can be fulfilled, King Zheng of Qin is still willing to give it a try. If he can teach today, then he will try teaching Fusu for half an hour every day in the future, and at most extend the time for reviewing memorials by half an hour at night. If the teaching situation is not good today, then he will find several gentlemen to be responsible for teaching young Master Fusu later under the command of King Zheng of Qin. The attendants quickly brought pens, ink, and silk. Then the father and son boldly taught, while the other boldly learned the more Qin King Zheng taught, the happier he became, because he found that as long as he taught it once, Fusu could immediately remember it and write it accurately and without error. But in just half an hour, he had already taught Fusu over 100 words. Based on this progress, it may take 10.5 days to teach Fusu the most basic literacy skills. Moreover, during the teaching process, Fusu did not cry or make a fuss at all, took it seriously, and did not need Zheng to waste any unnecessary thoughts. "As long as you can continue to be like you are today, I will continue to teach you how to read and read," said Zheng, the king of Qin, with rare joy. Gongzi Fusu also nodded and responded in a crisp voice, "Yes, father." Afterwards, in just 3 months, Gongzi Fusu finished learning tens of thousands of words. By the age of 4, young Master Fusu had already mastered the language of the 7 kingdoms. PS1. The new book sets sail and urgently needs the strong support of all handsome men, beautiful women, and big shots. Passing by, don't miss it. Roll around and ask for collection, recommendations, benefits, flowers, everything. If you haven't collected it yet, click to collect it. Thank you all. Kneel down to all the big shots. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 5. The 100 Schools of Thought, Prioritizing the Study of History and Winning Fusu. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Whether it was Gongzi Fusu, Gongzi Jianglu, or Princessing Yin Man, Princessing Liang, and others, looking at another Fusu on the sky, a hint of envy flashed in their eyes. The treatment of their father personally teaching literacy and reading can be said to make them very envious. At least among their brothers and sisters, no one can have such kind treatment. However, considering the previous incident where Tianmu said that their father did not know how to get along with their children, it may be because they were not bold enough. If they had been able to boldly and persistently ask their father to teach them how to read and read like another Fusu before, then perhaps their father would have agreed and personally taught them how to read and read. As for the painful experience of another Fusu who started literacy and reading at the age of 3, it was overlooked by them. Although they also want their father to personally teach them literacy and reading, they don't want to start literacy and reading at the age of 3. Marquis Wuchen Wangjian, Prime Minister Wei Zhua, Tingwei Li Si and other ministers looked at another Fushu on the sky, and a hint of amazement flashed in their eyes. In March, one can read 10,000 words and understand the words of 7 countries in a year. Such talent can definitely be said to be an unparalleled genius and prodigy. At least Li Si himself is also a young genius, otherwise he would not have been accepted as a disciple by Xuanzi. But looking back on when he was 3 or 4 years old, even if he was given the same educational resources as the young Master Fusu, he could not do what the other young Master Fusu did. Thinking of this, a group of ministers who had taught Fusu also glanced at the young Master Fusu not far away, and then quietly shook their heads. Although their eldest son Fusu can also be called intelligent, he is only intelligent. There is still a very long distance between the long young Master Fusu, who can be regarded as a genius and prodigy on the sky. Leaving aside other aspects for now, in terms of talent, their eldest son Fusu distanced himself from another eldest son Fusu. After completing literacy education, the next step of education is to teach young Master Fusu how to read. What do you want to learn first from various schools of thought, such as Buddhism, Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, Yin and Yang, Zongheng, Ming, Bing, and agriculture? King Zheng looked at his eldest son with a hint of curiosity, wanting to know what theory he was naturally interested in. Because Fusu has completed the 7 kingdoms and is only 4 years old now, King Zheng of Qin has no intention of formally teaching Fusu. He plans to focus on his interests. Let's take a look at which aspect of Fusu's innate interest lies, and he will briefly explain it to Fusu. After Fusu grows 2 years older, he will find another 100 knowledgeable scholars to teach him. As for whether the 4-year-old Fusu knows what the various schools of thought represent, there is no need to worry. In the past year's literacy education, he has also briefly talked about some content about various schools of thought, so Fusu also had a basic understanding of the 100 schools of thought under the sky. Li Si, representing the legalist school, Wang Jian, representing the military school, and Xiang Li Shi Mo, representing the Mahdist school, all looked at another young master, Fusu, with hopeful eyes. After all, the eldest son of this world, Fusu, is visibly close to Confucianism, and they naturally hope that the eldest son of another world, Fusu, can be close to them. Of course, scholars like Qianshou, who represents Confucianism, are also looking forward to the eldest son of another world, Fusu, choosing Confucianism. This can better demonstrate the correctness of their Confucianism. Even Qin Emperor Zheng showed a hint of curiosity about the choice of another world to support the Soviet Union. After all, the Fusu in this world has already grown crooked, and he is curious about which Fusu, who seems to have not yet grown crooked, would choose. Under the gaze of King Zheng of Qin, Fusu gave his answer. I want to study history. Study history, learn from historians. This answer can be said to have completely exceeded the expectations of King Zheng. After all, King Zheng had thought that Fusu might choose legalism, Confucianism, and even Moism, and so on. However, King Zheng of Qin never thought that the Fusu society would choose to study historians. Not to mention that the king of Qin, Zheng, from another world, did not expect that Fusu would want to learn the words of historians. Even the great Qin rulers and ministers from this world under the sky did not expect that another Fushu would actually want to learn historians first. This unique choice can be said to have exceeded everyone's expectations. Only the Taisha Ling on the side felt like a pie from heaven, and the whole person felt a bit dizzy. You should know that among the 100 schools of thought, the historian can be said to have always been a little transparent. Just like the Qin King Zheng on the heavenly curtain, when introducing the 100 schools of thought to Prince Fusu, he prioritized the schools of thought such as Buddhism, Confucianism, Mo, Taoism, Yin and Yang, and Zongheng, while the historians were directly omitted. After all, compared to other schools of thought, the role of historians is only one, which is to write history with a straight and straightforward style. What is the law of governing a country and ensuring its stability? No. If you want to find a way to govern and stabilize the country, you either need to go to another family or search for it yourself from the history recorded by historians. Anyway, historians know nothing besides recording history, and even if they do, they don't do anything. The last time a historian's reputation spread throughout the world was when Cui Zhu killed his ruler. That time, the three historians went on to write with their own lives, and finally recorded the whole story of Cui Zhu killing his ruler, shocking the world with the integrity of the historians. But that's all there is to it. Afterwards, the historian returned to a silent and nameless state. However, now the young master Fusu from another world actually wants to learn the words of historians first. Will historians prosper in the hands of the young master Fusu from another world? Everyone was staring at the other young master Fusu on the sky with bright eyes, wanting to know why he chose to prioritize learning the words of the historian. Why do you want to study history? King Zheng looked at his eldest son and asked with rare confusion. Because I believe that reading history can help people understand rise and fall, understand gains and losses, learn from the past, and look to the future. Just like the schools of Buddhism, Confucianism, Moism, Taoism, Yin and Yang, Zongheng and other schools of thought, they do not appear out of thin air. They must have influenced a great number of scholars and sages in various environments and reasons. Then, after experiencing the contemplation of various sages on all things, it was finally summarized. So I think if you want to understand the words of the 100 schools of thought, you must first understand the context in which the words of the 100 schools of thought were proposed. Only by understanding the reasons and backgrounds behind their appearance can we understand why the philosophers had such or such 100 schools of thought at that time, and also better understand the fundamental purpose of the philosophers' 100 schools of thought. Only then can we know whether the words of the various schools of thought, spoken in the past, spoken in the present, and spoken in the future, are in line with the times, or whether they require reform and innovation. 4-year-old Fusu looked up at his tall father and expressed his thoughts in a clear and organized manner. King Zheng rarely showed a stunned expression in front of his eldest son Fusu, although he has always believed that his eldest son Fusu is excellent, but only now did he realize that he still underestimated the excellence of his eldest son. At least, at his age, I don't have such a profound understanding of historians. After a while, King Zheng of Qin finally touched Fushu's little head with a rare touch. A smile on his face, but his expression was extremely serious, and he said, "Okay. I'll tell you the history. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 6. When historians prosper, they thrive in Fusu. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Knowing the rise and fall, understanding gains and losses, learning from the past, and looking forward to the future. Qin Taisha silently repeated these words, but in the end, he couldn't resist the excitement in his heart and laughed loudly from the sky. Ha ha ha, the Shi family should prosper in Fushu. The responsibilities and roles of historians have never been summarized so clearly and concisely as they are now. There is a saying that even if time passes by in the future, historians should continue to be passed down for thousands of years, and even in the future, all students will first study the history of historians before learning the words of various schools of thought. How can you know the rise and fall, understand gains and losses, learn from the past, and look into the future without studying the history of historians? That's why Qin Taishiling said, the historian should prosper, and prosper in Fusu. Qin Emperor Zheng also turned around and his gaze fell on Fusu for a moment. He then scanned the other children and finally ordered. Afterwards, Fusu copied the history books of the Zhou dynasty and now 10 times. Others, please also copy the history book once, I will personally review it. Qin Emperor Zheng suddenly felt that it might be because he had not made Fusu study the history of historians seriously in the past, and did not let Fusu truly understand the 500 years of war brought about by the Zhou dynasty's enfeoffment. So when discussing the system of enfeoffment and the system of prefectures and counties before, Fusu had a confused mind and chose to support the system of enfeoffment. He has always been a person who listens to advice and changes his mistakes. Since there was a lack of education on the history of Fusu before, he has now made up for it again. Upon hearing these words, Fusu couldn't help but be taken aback, but then he also understood his father's meaning. He immediately bowed his head and arched his hand in response. Yes, father. Let him take a look at another thing, he said. Reading history reveals rise and fall, understanding gains and losses, learning from the past, and looking into the future. What exactly is going on? Young Master Jiang Lu, young Master Gao, Princess Ying Man, and others who were eating melons on the side, were immediately stunned when they heard their father's orders. No, what does this other 4-year-old brother say have to do with them? Father, if you want to punish them, isn't punishing their current big brother enough? Why punish them again? Copy history books, or copy all the history books from the Zhou dynasty to the present day. I'm afraid you're going to break your wrist when you copy it. Heaven knows how many historical records there are from the Zhou dynasty to the present day. Oh, no need for heaven to know, the grand historian should also know. However, even though the young masters and princesses were filled with resentment, they could only obediently respond to the calm and unquestionable gaze of Emperor Qin Zheng. Yes, father. The Taishiling beside him touched his chin beard with a smile on his face. What did he just say? The Shi family is thriving in Fushu. Isn't this about to prosper soon? From then on, the history of historians became an essential part of the enlightenment and learning of young masters and princesses. Of course, not only did the young masters and princesses receive such treatment. After hearing about the arrangements made by the first emperor for their children, civil and military officials with descendants such as Marquis Tungwu Wangben, Tingwei Li Si, Left Prime Minister Wei Zhuang, and Right Prime Minister Wang Wan were also prepared to go back and make the same arrangements for their children. Not to mention copying 10 times like the eldest Prince Fusu, but it should not be excessive to copy it like other young masters and princesses. It's better to take a good copy of the history than to save a group of rabbits at home from jumping up and down with excessive energy. I don't expect those little brats to know the rise and fall, understand the gains and losses, learn from the past, and look to the future. As long as they can live peacefully for 10.5 days, that's enough. Even they themselves are prepared to take a good look at history books later. After all, knowing the rise and fall, understanding gains and losses, learning from the past, and looking into the future all sound impressive. After Fusu decided to prioritize studying history, King Qin Zheng also began to give him lectures on history starting from the ancient 3 emperors and 5 emperors, then to Si Xiang, Zhou, and then to the state of Qin starting from the ancestor Qin Fizi's appreciation for raising horses for King Shaowang of Zhou. He was granted the land of Qin and became the first ruler of the state of Qin after nearly 100 years of exposure to the harsh environment in the western frontier. Qin Ho, Qin Gongwa, Qin Zhong, Qin Zhuanggong, and the ancient Qin people gradually adapted to it, and their national strength also grew day by day. Then, during the reign of Duke Xiang of Qin, he was appointed as a vassal state by King Peng of Zhou, thanks to his efforts in saving and protecting the king. Finally, Qin became one of the vassal states, afterwards, after experiencing the efforts of Qin Xianggong. Qin Shaogong. Qin Zhaoxian Wang, Qin Xiaowen Wang, and Qin Zhuangxian Wang, the ambition of the great Qin to unify the world has become unstoppable. After discussing the history of Qin, King Zheng of Qin did not stop because as early as teaching Fusu how to read and learn, King Zheng discovered that Fusu was born with an unforgettable talent. Therefore, King Zheng of Qin not only told Fusu about the history of Qin, but also told him about the history of Chu, Qi, Yan, Zhao, Wei, and Korea, even some other miscellaneous feudal states, such as Yu, Lu, Zheng, and so on, can be found and recorded by the Qin Grand Historian. King Zheng has told Fusu everything. Anyway, Fusu has an unforgettable talent, so it's not bad to remember more. After a year, Fusu finally finished learning the history of ancient and modern times that could be found. Gongzi Jianglu, Gongzi Gao, Princess Yin Man and others looked at the 5-year-old Fusu in the sky with envy in their eyes. No matter what history book it is, as long as you read it once, you can remember it, and after listening to it once, you can recite it. What an enviable talent and ability. Thinking back on how I often work hard to memorize a book for 10.5 days and may not be able to recite it completely, my heart suddenly feels even more sour. If they also have the talent to never forget, then they no longer have to worry about memorizing and learning. Even the eldest young master Fusu was a little envious of another self, because he did not have such a natural ability to never forget. After spending a year reading through the history of ancient and modern times, King Zheng of Qin could clearly feel the difference in his eldest son. If a year ago, Fushu's eyes looked like a well of water, clear and clear but bottomless, so now, Fushu's eyes look like a silent lake, calm, deep, and calm, as if he can see through everything. This made King Zheng, who had only taught history to Fusu for a whole year without asking what he had gained from it, very curious about what his eldest son had gained during his year of studying history, and how such a great change had occurred. So King Zheng of Qin specially set aside half a day of free time to have a conversation with Fusu. Have you gained anything in history this year? Fusu, who was only 5 years old, sat upright like a young adult. He looked up at his father across from him, nodded, and calmly replied, I have gained quite a lot. What have you gained? Said Zheng, the king of Qin, with even greater anticipation in his eyes. Fusu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, the first gain is that power comes from Qianshou. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 7. Power, coming from Qianshou. Seeking flowers. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Does power come from Qianshou? What power can Qianshou have? What nonsense is he talking about? I thought the other son of that tyrant was really some prodigy or genius, and it turned out he was just a little fool. After watching another prodigy named Fusu on the sky for a long time, Xiang, who felt a bit frustrated, finally found a place to mock. For him, Qianshou was just a lowly person kneeling at his feet, begging for his blessings to survive. Such a lowly person, he can make them live with just one sentence, and the same sentence can also make them die. What power does a lowly person who controls life and death in his hands have? The fact that Fusu claimed that power comes from Qianshou is simply a great fallacy in the wilderness. The other 6 countries have similar attitudes towards cultural heritage, and in this era, kings, nobles, generals, and prime ministers had a seed mentality. Without seed, one cannot even be a prince or a general. And the statement made by Fusu that power comes from the head of Guizhou is essentially the same heinous and immoral statement as the previous revelation from the heavenly curtain that it is better for kings, nobles, generals, and prime ministers to have seed. If such heinous and immoral words were spoken from the mouths of other lowly people in Qianshou, then perhaps it is still reasonable. After all, other lowly people in Qianshou did not have seeds, so in order to slander these aristocrats who have seeds, they said such a heinous and immoral phrase as, it would be better for kings, nobles, generals, and ministers to have seeds. Although unexpected, it is still understandable. However, as the most esteemed eldest son of Qin, who was only under Zheng, he also uttered similar words. This is somewhat incomprehensible in the eyes of the aristocrats of the Qin state, even though it is a legacy of the Six Kingdoms. Because this is equivalent to another Fusu refuting and overturning the natural and correct nature of his power. In other words, another Fusu betrayed his own class. Or, to put it another way, it is. Why did your majesty rebel? So not to mention the aristocrats of the Qin state and the legacies of the six states in this world, even the Qin Emperor Zheng frowned and couldn't understand why another Fusu would say such words. King Zheng raised his eyebrows with a sword. He didn't expect his eldest son, Fusu, to gain the first thing after studying history for a year. Power comes from the head of Guizhou. King Zheng found it difficult to understand, but he knew that his eldest son Fusu was naturally intelligent. The reason why he said that must be because he has his own reasons. So King Zheng of Qin also wanted to hear why Fusu came to such a conclusion or gain. Why do you have such thoughts? After reading history, I have been thinking about where my power comes from, said Fusu after thinking for a moment. I am the eldest son of my father, the eldest son of the great Qin, and my power comes from my father and the bestowal of the great Qin. After all, if it weren't for my father, if I wasn't his eldest son, if I wasn't the eldest son of the great Qin, then I wouldn't have my current status and power. And if my power comes from my father, from the great Qin, where does my father's power come from? Just as my power comes from my father, it is clear that my father's power also comes from his father, who affirmed and bestowed it upon me by King Qianshou of Qin. Because if it weren't for the eldest father appointing the father king as the crown prince, then the father king wouldn't be able to become the new king of Qin after the eldest father. Tracing back layer by layer, it was not until the ancestor Qin Fizi gained recognition for raising horses for King Shao of Zhou and was granted the land of Qin, becoming the first ruler of the state of Qin. In other words, the power of ancestors and other feudal lords comes from the affirmation and bestowal of the Zhou emperor. So, where did the power of Zhou Tianzi to enfeoff feudal lords come from? Tracing back layer by layer, all the way back to King Wu of Zhou. It can be said that the reason why the later Zhou emperor was able to have the power to enfeoff feudal lords was because King Wu of Zhou overthrew the rule of Emperor Xian of the Shang dynasty. After replacing the Shang dynasty, the Zhou emperor only gained the same power as the Shang emperor. The fact that the Zhou emperor was able to replace the Shang emperor indicates that the power of the emperor is not innate and fixed and cannot be transferred. The power of the Zhou emperor originated from the overthrow of the Shang emperor, Emperor Xian. So, where did the power of the Shang emperor originally come from? Similarly, tracing back layer by layer, the reason why the later Shang emperor was able to have such power was because Shang Emperor Tang overthrew the rule of Xia dynasty Jie. So, where did the power of the Xia dynasty emperor originally come from? Originating from Qi established the Xia dynasty, and since then, the throne has been passed down from father to son through one family and one surname. But before Qi, the last person to declare himself king was Yu. The throne of Yu was abdicated by Shun Chan. The so-called abdication refers to the king holding a tribal alliance meeting at that time, where the leaders of each tribe elected wise and just individuals who could convince everyone as the heir of the king. After Emperor Shun grew old, he held a tribal alliance meeting, and all parties jointly elected the great Yu, who had made contributions to water management, as the king. Therefore, Emperor Shun held an abdication ceremony and recommended Yu as his successor in front of the ancestral tablet in the ancestral temple. So Yu became the new ruler of the world after Emperor Shun. Similarly, Yao also selected Shun as the new co-ruler of the world through the same method, along with the Qianshou tribe from all directions. In other words, ancient sages like Yao, Shun, and Yu did not have a father or ancestor who had already become a king as their initial source of power, or rather, they were able to become kings. But it relied on the achievements made by oneself, and then received the joint recommendation and recognition of the Qianshou tribes from all over the world. In the end, Yao, Shun, and Yu became the co-rulers of the world, and only then did they have the power of a king. In other words, the initial power did not come from the king, but from the head of Guizhou. Only with the common recognition of the leaders of Guizhou from all over the world can a king truly become a king. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 8. The Power of Qianshou, Time Flies, Give. You are listening at novel full.audio. With the words of another Fusu falling from the sky, the whole world fell silent. After a while, Emperor Q.Ying Zheng looked at the nearby Qin II Jun and asked. Is what he said true? Even Zheng is not very clear about the past affairs of the 3 emperors and 5 emperors of Xia and Shang. After all, besides historians who specialize in understanding and researching this kind of matter, others usually just need to know it briefly. For example, knowing who the 3 emperors and 5 emperors specifically refer to. For example, knowing the most famous Jia of the Xia dynasty, the most famous Zhou of the Shang dynasty, and the most famous Wen and Wu kings of the Zhou dynasty would be enough. The rest, even if we want to delve deeper, is to understand the history of our own country. So for a moment, even Qin Emperor Zheng could not determine whether the words spoken by another Fusu on the sky were true or false. However, this is not important. There is a Taishiling present who can confirm the authenticity of this matter. Therefore, everyone present focused their attention on Taishiling. After closing his eyes and carefully recalling the history books he had read from beginning to end, the grand historian nodded at everyone with complex eyes and sighed lightly. What the other young master Fusu said is correct. At least according to historical records, this is indeed the case. As soon as these words were spoken, the ministers present either frowned or had an unpleasant expression. If it weren't for the people on the heavenly curtain being another young master of their Qin dynasty, Fusu, there might have been ministers who would angrily curse the young master on the heavenly curtain for talking nonsense and deceiving the people. Because the remarks made by Prince Fusu on the heavenly curtain can be said to shake the naturalness and correctness of His Majesty's power and rule. Your Majesty, do you need to send someone to clarify later? Captain Li arched his hand and advised. After all, if the remarks of Tianmu Fusu were to spread, it would easily fuel some unnecessary thoughts of Qianshou. Qin Emperor Zheng opened his eyes again and spoke calmly. Continue to observe and discuss later. For Qin Emperor Zheng, spreading the words of Tianmu Fushu would indeed cause great trouble. But no matter how big the trouble is, can it be even greater than the trouble of the collapse of the great Qin seen in the sky curtain before? That's not about shaking his royal rule, but about directly destroying his great Qin empire. So under the great trouble of the impending downfall of the great Qin, all other troubles turned into relatively minor ones. Fallacy. Absolute fallacy. It's definitely that crazy person talking nonsense. How could our power come from those lowly people? Countless aristocrats from the 6 countries angrily threw their wine bottles and pointed at the Fushu on the sky, cursing angrily. The words of Fusu on the sky not only shook the naturalness and correctness of Qin Emperor Zheng's power, but also shook the naturalness and correctness of their past power as rulers and nobles of the 6 states. Although their homeland has fallen now, who can guarantee that they will not be restored in the future? Since the spring and autumn period and the warring states period, there have been many examples of a country being restored after its downfall. This is also the reason why the nobles of the 6 countries remain steadfast in their anti-Qin stance after the downfall of their homeland. Because they don't feel like they are really dead, maybe they will succeed in restoring their country in the future. Especially since the previous sky curtain also revealed the scene of the downfall of the Qin state, their hope for their own restoration was even greater. If they succeed in restoring their country in the future, the words of Tianmu Fushu will also shake the natural and correct power of them as the rulers and nobles of the 6 countries, thereby affecting their rule over the Qianshou region. It involves their own interests, which is why these 6 countries' legacies continue to roar and curse. Does power actually come from Qianshou like us? Did the ancient Yao, Shen, and Yu actually be jointly recommended and elected by us and the Qianshou? Is it the mutual recognition of us, the leaders of Guizhou, that made the king truly a king? Qianshou, from all over the world, looked at Fushu on the sky and murmured to himself in disbelief. However, soon after, a group of cultural elites from 6 countries came forward and mocked. That's something that only happened in ancient times, you wouldn't think it's still ancient now. Now is no longer ancient times. Our power comes from our ancestors, not from the common people. A lowly person should have the appearance of a lowly person, and not have some inappropriate thoughts. However, even so, Qianshou such as Lu Ji, Fan Kuai, Peng Yue, and Yingbu, under the impact of the Tianmu Fusu discourse, their already active minds further became restless and restless. Regarding the words spoken by Fusu, King Zheng of Qin remained silent for a long time before speaking up. Perhaps it was in ancient times, but now it is not in ancient times, and what you said may not be correct even today. Since its inception, the inheritance of the world's throne has long been not recommended and recognized by the head of Guizhou. The transmission of power from the king to the king is the source and inheritance of power today. Fushu shook his head and said with a firm expression, no. It was like this in ancient times, and it is still like this today. Power comes from the head of Guizhou, which has never changed from the 3 emperors and 5 emperors of ancient times to the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties, and now. At most, it's just transitioning from the surface to the darkness. At this point, Fusu paused and looked at his father's frown. He continued, without the common recognition from the head of Guizhou, the 3 emperors and 5 emperors of ancient times could not have become the co-rulers of the world. Similarly, without the support of the majority of Qianshou, could he establish the Xia dynasty. If the Tang of the Shang dynasty did not have the support of the ruling generals and Qianshou, could he and other nobles alone really overthrow the rule of the Xia dynasty's Jia? If there was no support from the leaders of the 4 regions of Guizhou in the world, could the rule of Zhou in the Shang dynasty really be overthrown solely by Zhou Wen and Wu Wang? Even if it weren't for the support and recognition of the millions of old Qin people who ruled over it, even the father would have. Is it true that relying solely on the father king, or the civil and military nobles of the Manchu dynasty, one can truly secure the throne and become a true king of Qin? Only those who truly receive the support and recognition of millions of old Qin people are the true kings of Qin. Even if he doesn't have the title of a king, he's not a king but a king. His throne is as stable as Mount Tai. On the contrary, without the support and recognition of millions of old Qin people. So even if someone gets the approval of the former king of Qin and the recognition of the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty, then he is still a king rather than a king. Even if he luckily ascends to the throne, compared to the former, it is only a matter of waving his hand to destroy it. However, most of the time, the capital of Guizhou was accustomed to having its former kings, as well as the civil and military nobles of the Manchu dynasty, decide who could become their king. However, this does not mean that they do not have the ability to choose their own king, if they are pushed to the extreme and not given a way out. So even the most ordinary Qianshou would rise up in rebellion, overthrow the old king, and elect a new king. During the reign of Xia Jia, the head of Qian once said, "Time flies, and you are all dead. When will the son of Xia Jia be destroyed? We are willing to die with you." So after the uprising of Shang Tang, countless Qian leaders of the Xia dynasty chose to support Shang Tang and overthrow Xia Jia. During the reign of King Li of Zhou, there was also a situation where the people of the country expelled their rulers. The king of a country is directly exiled to swine by Qianshou people at the bottom, and will never return. This is enough to demonstrate that the lowest and most ordinary leaders of Guizhou, once united, are also capable of changing the world and the dynasty. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 9. One sentence erases the distinction between high and low, destroys. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Time flies and you all perish. King.Li rushes to swine, and the people of the country chase the king. Qin Emperor Zheng silently recited these two words. Although Zheng, the Qin Emperor, did not know about the history of Si Xiang and Zhou, he still knew two very famous historical allusions, such as, the death of every day, and the death of every one of you, and, King.Li ran to swine, and the monarch was chased by the people of the country. However, in the past, Emperor Qin Zheng understood these two stories from the perspectives of Xia Jie's lack of justice and Li Wang's absurdity. But now, under the explanation of Tianmu Fusu, Qin Emperor Zheng is using a different perspective to understand these two stories for the first time, and sees the power possessed by those Qianshou hidden in these two stories. Thinking back to what Tianmu Fusu said, only those who receive the support and recognition of millions of old Qin people are true kings. Emperor Qin Zheng's gaze also became deep. If someone can really gain the support and recognition of millions of old Qin people, then is this Qin Emperor really Qin Emperor? Obviously not. Even if it is still Qin Emperor in name, it is just a puppet that others can easily dismiss with just one word. At this moment, the towering Qin Emperor Zheng finally lowered his gaze and gazed at the Qianshou that he had never seen before. After pondering for a long time, King Zheng of Qin looked up at his eldest son with complex eyes and said, "Don't you really feel that your bloodline is more noble than other Qianshou? Do you have a destiny?" Fushu shook his head and said, "I would be proud of my inherited bloodline, but I don't feel that my bloodline is any more prestigious than the bloodlines of other Qianshou. Just like tracing the source of power before, with the passage of time, the survival of Qianshou is not easy. Although there is no record of the Qianshou that has survived to this day, if we trace it back, which ancestor has not produced any outstanding figures? Besides, we also have a common ancestor in 3 emperors and 5 emperors. We in Qianshou are all descendants of the Miao people of the Xia dynasty. How can there be a distinction between high, low, and noble bloodlines, even though they are both descendants of the Xia and Miao ethnic groups? Or does my father think that the nobles of the 7 kingdoms are not of the Xia and Miao ethnic groups? Or is it possible that the Qianshou people in the world are not considered to be descendants of the Miao people of the Xia dynasty?" Fushu looked at his father and asked in reverse. However, does King Zheng of Qin dare to say that the nobles of the 7 countries, including himself, are not of the Miao ethnic group of the Xia, or is the Qianshou of the world not considered to be of the Miao ethnic group of the Xia? I dare not. Once King Zheng of Qin said these words, it would be like refuting his Yan Huang background and the orthodoxy of the Xia dynasty. At that time, even King Zheng of Qin would isolate himself from the world. Tingwei Lizi looked at Fushu on the sky and suddenly stopped writing, praising. The aristocratic bloodline theory is exhausted today. In this era of emperors, nobles, and generals, the nobility of the vassal states, monarchs, and nobles can be said to be recognized by everyone in the world. Even if some people privately disdain the so-called vassals, monarchs, and aristocratic bloodline, they still need to show an attitude of approval on the surface. Otherwise, they will be jointly attacked by other feudal lords, monarchs, and nobles. Because anyone who denies this logical theory is equivalent to harming the vested interests of all feudal lords, monarchs, and nobles. So in the chaotic era of the late Qin dynasty, even though the current heroes had their own thoughts, they still had to carry the banner of restoring the 6 kingdoms. Just like Xiang, who, with his own strength, had to pinch his nose and support King Hui of Chu to rebuild the state of Chu, killing all the heroes and feudal lords in the world with fear. It can be imagined how prevalent the noble bloodline theory is in this era. It was not until later that the line shouted out by Chen Sheng during the Wuguangda Zixiang uprising, "It is better to have seeds than to have seeds," shattered the noble bloodline and nobility theory that has existed since the Zhou dynasty for 800 years. And now, the phrase from Tianmu Fushu, "We have a common ancestor and 3 emperors and 5 emperors," and we are all descendants of the Miao people in various Xia regions, completely erases the past nobility. The nobles of any country can use their bloodline to argue back with this sentence. As long as they dare to refute this statement, it is a refutation of their Yanhuang background and the orthodoxy of the Zhuxia. So on this land called Zhuxia under my feet, there will be no more shelter for them. As a legalist, Li Si was actually very happy to see such a result. After all, Li Si is not a noble. Perhaps our ancestors were once wealthy, but by the time we reached his generation, they had already declined. Otherwise, when he was young, he wouldn't just be an ordinary clerk in charge of documents. Secondly, he is a legalist. What does legalism advocate? It is the prince who breaks the law and commits the same crime as the common people. When Changgongzi Qian broke the law in the past, his senior legalist scholar Shang Yang would punish Changgongzi Qian. Although the sin of Changgongzi Qian was ultimately borne by his mentor Gongsun Jia Dai, this is enough to demonstrate the legalist school's disdain for those noble aristocrats with noble bloodlines. After all, the easiest people to ignore the law are those nobles who feel that their bloodline is noble and can ignore the law. Compared to the delighted Li Si, the aristocrats of the 6 countries were even more angry, and all kinds of angry words were spoken out. At this moment, the anger of the nobles of the 6 countries towards Tianmu Fusu even briefly surpassed that of Qin Emperor Zheng, who had destroyed their homeland. After all, the Qin Emperor Zheng only destroyed their country at most, but the Tianmu Fusu first shook the correctness and naturalness of their noble power, and later overturned their noble bloodline theory. In the future, it can be said that it is extremely difficult for them to rule Qianshou reasonably, legally, and naturally based on their own bloodline and the glory of their ancestors, surpassing others. Not to mention the aristocrats of the 6 countries, even the relatives of Qin were silently cursing the Fushu on the sky. Because the words of Tianmu Fusu were an indiscriminate blow. Not only did it erase the nobility of the aristocratic bloodline of the 6 countries, but it also erased the nobility of the aristocratic bloodline of the Qin state. Is Tianmu saying that we, Qianshou, have the same bloodline as those nobles? We are not humble, perhaps our ancestors also had nobles. We and the nobles are all of the Miao ethnic group from various Xia countries. We all have a common ancestor and 3 emperors and 5 emperors. The noble bloodline is no more noble than ours. Our bloodline in Qianshou is not inferior to those nobles. The people of Qianshou from all over the world first couldn't believe it, then murmured to themselves, and finally you looked at me, I looked at you, as if a spark had ignited in each other's eyes. At the same time, the nobles who used to be afraid to look up directly, at this moment, also boldly looked up. Bold. Who allowed you to look at me like that? A noble scholar from 6 countries shouted loudly. However, even if those Qianshou were scolded by the nobles, they did not lower their heads anymore. On the contrary, more and more Qianshou raised their heads and gazed at the aristocratic scholars who had just started scolding. That silent gaze, like an invisible pressure, loomed over the nobleman's heart, making him increasingly anxious. In the end, the nobleman cursed fiercely and fled in embarrassment. When the capital of Guizhou raises its head, it is time for the nobles to lower their heads. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th. Chapter 10. The mind is calm, desiring to rest and rejuvenate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fusu looked at his father and continued, as for fate. Does father believe in fate? Or do you think that the reason why the state of Qin can achieve today's unification is due to the divine mandate? Does my father think it's a thing of the past to say that just one sentence of fate has erased the hard work and efforts of countless rulers, officials, soldiers, and people throughout the history of Qin state in order to expand eastward, strengthen the country, and unify? King Zheng remained silent for a while, then nodded and said, "You're right. Qin never believed in fate. Every inch of Qin's territory was bought by our ancestors, soldiers, and people through swords and spears, as well as through fighting and fighting. If we believe in the mandate of heaven, if we acknowledge it, our state of Qin would have long perished. Color. Under the sky, Emperor Qianshou Zheng couldn't help but cheer for himself in another world. As another self said, the state of Qin never believed in fate, let alone recognized it. So even if it turns out that the great Qin is about to fall, he will inevitably reverse this fate, allowing the kingdom of great Qin to establish eternal prosperity and allow it to continue for thousands of years. The eunuch Zhao Gao, who was standing not far away, saw this scene and immediately cleverly bowed loudly. Your Majesty, for thousands of years. For thousands of years, the great Qin. The other civil and military officials, upon seeing this, also bowed and said, Your Majesty, for thousands of years. For thousands of years, the great Qin. At this moment, the rulers and ministers of the great Qin are all united. Besides power comes from Qianshou, what else have you gained from history books? After listening to the first point, King Qianshou Zheng knocked on the desk and continued to ask. He is very curious about how much surprise his eldest son can give him. Fusu nodded and continued, the second thing I have learned from history is that people's minds are calm. Since King Peng of Zhou moved his capital to Lui, the lords of the world have been fighting back and forth for a full 500 years. For the past 500 years, the Qianshou people in the world have been living a life of uncertainty and mediocrity. These days have almost made Qianshou in the world endure to the limit. The most coveted thing for the Qianshou of the 6 kingdoms in the world now is stability, peace, and rest. Whoever can fulfill their wish will receive their most enthusiastic support. Upon hearing this, King Ying Zheng of Qin suddenly spoke up, as you said, the feudal lords of the world have been fighting for a full 500 years. For 500 years, all the people of the 6 countries have had blood relatives die at the hands of the Qin state. It is not an exaggeration to say that there is a deep hatred between the 7 countries. Under such circumstances, can Qin still gain their support? Fusu nodded and affirmed, yes. People always have to look forward. Perhaps some of the ancestors of the people of the 6 states died at the hands of the Qin state. But didn't the ancestors of the Qin people die at the hands of the people of the 6 kingdoms? Didn't the fathers and ancestors of the people of the 6 countries die at the hands of each other's people? If we really want to calculate this blood account, then it won't be clear. The only way to truly figure it out is for the people of one country to completely slaughter the people of the other 6 countries. Only when the people of the other 6 countries are completely eradicated, can this blood account truly come to an end. But can this really be done? Qin Emperor Zheng shook his head, unable to do it. Even though the current state of Qin unified the 6 states, it could not achieve such a brutal act of slaughtering all the people of the 6 states. Once this is truly done, the people of the 6 states who fought back to the death will be enough to pull the Qin state to destruction together. Previously, Emperor Qianshou Zheng did not care about the power of the Qianshou because he could not see the Qianshou in his eyes. But after the narration by Tianmu Fusu just now, he also realized that even those Qianshou who had never been seen by him before, once united, could unleash terrifying power. Whether it is the ancestors and fathers of the old Qin people who died at the hands of the Qianshou of the 6 kingdoms, or the ancestors and fathers of the Qianshou of the 6 kingdoms who died at the hands of the old Qin people, the blood debt between the Qianshou of the 7 kingdoms should stop here. If Qianshou still cannot let go of the blood debts of his ancestors, then please let them take a look at their own descendants. And then ask if they want their descendants to continue living a precarious life, rushing to the battlefield, and ultimately dying on the battlefield without even finding their bodies. Do you still want the war to end in their generation, leaving a stable and peaceful world for their descendants, so that they can no longer be in danger of war, share the joy of family and grow up healthy and happy? I think the vast majority of Guizhou's capital would choose the latter. Because people live not only for the hatred of their ancestors, but also for themselves and their descendants. Fusu said calmly. The Qianshou of Qin, as well as the former Chu, Qi, Yan, Zhao, Wei, and Han regions, all looked up at the Fushu on the sky and fell into a long silence. The spring and autumn period and the warring states period lasted for hundreds of years, and the ancestors of the Qianshou people in the world also fought for hundreds of years. Under the propaganda and guidance of the nobles and nobles of various countries, they also hated each other for hundreds of years. Will they continue to fight and hate each other? Do they still want their descendants to live a precarious life like theirs? Do they still want their descendants to continue to rush to the battlefield like their parents and ancestors did in the past, and never return? The Qianshou people from all over the world are thinking about the deep blood feuds accumulated by their ancestors, as well as the end of the war described by Tianmu Fushu on their generation. Descendants will no longer be plagued by war and enjoy a peaceful and healthy future. In the end, the Qianshou of the original Korean region gave a sigh of relief. Pooh, the Qin people killed my ancestors, but my ancestors also killed the Qin people. Let's clear our minds. The Qianshou of Yuanshu laughed heartily. Ha ha ha, the Qin people killed 8 of my ancestors, fathers, and brothers, and my ancestors, fathers, and brothers killed 11 of Qin. After all, I still took advantage of it. I can't let the Qin people take back the advantage. The Qianshou of Yuanshi suddenly knelt down towards the graves of his ancestors, banging his head several times and saying in a deep voice. I'm sorry, Dad, my son is unfilial. Your revenge may not be able to be avenged for you anymore. I want my dogs to live well and not have to live the unpredictable days you and I used to have. The Qianshou of the original Zhao region sighed. Just trust the Qin people once, trust the young master Fusu in the sky once. I hope the war will end in our generation, and I hope our descendants can live a peaceful and healthy life. The eyes of Qianshou in the former Yan region show a hopeful look. Now that Qin has conquered the 6 states and unified the world, can we live a peaceful and stable life in the future? The Qianshou of the former Wei region looked up at the sky and shouted loudly. We want to rest and recuperate. We want a peaceful and stable life. We can no longer hate the people of Qin. The nobles of the 6 states, including Xiang Liang, Wei Jiu, and Tian Dan, listened to the reactions of the surrounding Qianshou and their faces changed greatly. Although they consider themselves noble and look down on those Qianshou, they are also very clear that if they want to overthrow the tyrannical Qin, they must rely on Qianshou. If the 6 states of Qian no longer hate the state of Qin and no longer resist the rule of Yingzheng, then it is impossible for them alone to overthrow the tyrannical Qin. Thinking of this, the nobles of Xiang Liang, Wei Jiu, Tian Dan and other 6 countries couldn't help but curse. Damn Fusu! Firstly, it shook the correctness and naturalness of their aristocratic power, and then overturned their aristocratic bloodline nobility theory. Now, it has also led the 6 states of Qian to let go of their hatred towards Qin. This is simply to cut off their hope of restoring their country and force them towards a dead end. Qingming outing and happy reading. Charge 100 and get 500 VIP coupons. Immediate recharge, activity period. April 4th to April 6th.